This is Power Athlete Radio. With your hosts, Denny K, Professor Booty, and the Luke Summers. And now, toes forward, hips locked, shoulders set, and retract those scapulars. It's time for some knowledge bombs.
Just go, man. What's happening, Power Athlete Nation? Welcome to episode 54 of Power Athlete Radio. We got Playtech on the line, the Power Athlete coaches, John, Luke, and Callie, and Tex.
Yo.
And we have a special guest, Jeff Gonzalez from Trident Concepts. How you doing, guys?
Doing great.
What is up? Callie's not here, man.
Callie's not there. I thought I heard her laughing in the background.
No, that's just a cackle. We just, the problem is Callie's voice is so memorable that you just think you hear it when you don't.
I know.
But we had, this podcast had a lot of people on it, so Callie kind of tapped out a little bit and said, you know what, I got some errands to run, and she's running around doing the Badges for Life deal, so she's out there hustling people to get into the contest this weekend. So she's definitely earning her money this week.
That's great. We exchanged some interesting banter through emails. It sounds like you and Jeff go way back. Jeff, do you mind just starting the show off, maybe a little bit of how you met John and some of the things that you and he have been working on?
Sure. Let's see. I think it was Tony who put us together, wasn't it? John? Well, I'm pretty sure it was a friend of ours, a mutual friend, Tony Blower, who introduced the two of us, and I think we got together and quickly we realized that there was a lot of things that we had, a lot of shared interest and whatnot, and a lot of quest for knowledge on both our ends, respectively. And so I had approached John because I had suffered several injuries over my career and was kind of struggling with some of the fitness goals that I had set for myself. And, we kind of started literally at the bottom, the bottom of the rung in a sense. And we were really experimenting with a lot of different things. The first thing I told John was like, listen, I can't get hurt anymore. I've got to recover and got to get back into the game. So I was a little reluctant to do things like right out of the gate. And he was very good about some of the stuff that we did. It was like a pre-course of sorts. And then when we finally got into the meat of this program, it just was one of these things where it jived, it worked really well, and I was constantly sending him updates about the lifts or the efforts that I was putting in, and we took a step back. I'm not sure how long ago, and realized, wow, there's substance here that's something that we weren't thinking about or hadn't thought about.
What was your background? Can you talk a little bit about your former career?
Of course, I'm sorry. So my background comes from Naval Special Warfare. So I spent the better half of my adult life as a SEAL, both on the East Coast and the West Coast, as an operator, as an instructor. So, John puts it mildly, a high mileage job of sorts. And, I was fairly lucky. Obviously, I sustained injuries, but not nearly as bad as some of the guys. And, I'm also 45 years old, so the ability to kind of put that same level of intensity that I did when I was in my 30s obviously is somewhat different. So that was another concern. Currently, what we do, or what I do, is I run a training company that specializes in high-end, premium-grade weapons and tactics training. And one of the things that John and I both share is a love for shooting, and we enjoy that kind of activity. And we were drawing a lot of corollaries between shooting and the physical requirements to shoot at peak levels. And I think that's where we kind of started to really go down a unique path with this programming. It was very goal-oriented towards that.
Excellent. That sounds like a cool idea.
I agree.
How do you or how did you two come to an agreement, or at least try to blend the two disciplines, if you would?
Well, I kind of think John has a good, I mean, he's been exposed to a lot of our guys, so he has a good working knowledge of the requirements. And I just specified what I wanted. I told him a lot of guys will approach him and say kind of the same thing, like, hey, here's my mission profile. I need to be able to do this, this, and this, and I have this to work with. So for me, I told, we really concentrated on, I need to be able to pick something heavy up. I need to be able to carry something heavy. I need to be able to pull myself up or push somebody up. So we kind of isolated what I wanted to do, and then we created the programming around that. It was very fixed on, what I like to tell people is, to improving my lethality on the battlefield, basically. And, it was very geared towards what that was going to look like. And we talked a lot about the various movements, and we agreed on deadlifts, back squats, overhead presses, and pull-ups being like the main kind of focal point for the movement patterns.
Okay. And like you're kicking ass in that program, right? I mean, before we went on the air, we were just going over some of your numbers in the deadlift. What was that again? With 405 for 5?
Yeah, it was. And what's funny is I can remember when we first started this. I remember like.
What was the goal, Jeff? When we first started.
That's what I was trying to remember. Can you remember what?
Yeah, it was. You wanted to deadlift 300 pounds.
Yeah,
that's right.
It was on Balboa.
Yeah. When you came out to Balboa and we put together the program and I kind of presented what we wanted to do, I asked you about what your goals and what you're training for, and you were like, "Hey, I'd like to be able to deadlift 300 pounds." And I remember the squat was somewhere around like 250.
Yeah.
Because I remember you're like, if I can deadlift 300 pounds, I should be able to squat like 225, right? And I was like, maybe 225, 250. And you're like, man, if I could squat 250, that'd be really good. And if I could deadlift 300. And I remember being like, those are, if that's your goal, man, it's going to be, we're already ahead of the curve a little bit. And then to have you pull 405 for 5, and you also squatted, I want to say, was it 310 for like 11 reps?
Yeah, no, it was 10 reps.
Yeah, 10 reps. So Jeff's program was a little interesting. When we design programming, we really look at the individual and the athlete and really what they, what their previous training history was, what kind of metabolic pathways they developed. And obviously Jeff being a Navy SEAL is good with volume and used to training with great frequency, and just, the volume approach was really good. And we really run into two types of athletes, those big monkeys and those little monkeys. And Jeff is definitely a big monkey. So, keeping that in mind, we designed a style of training that was, really predicated on just, some basic movement patterns, and we really trained his plane of motion, and, put some smart conditioning and really kind of mixed it up, and, and one found a program that he wanted to do so that he was happy to stick with it. And I designed, I think, the first 9 weeks, and then I made Jeff put together the next 9 weeks, and I went back and made changes, and we've kind of gone back and forth, and I think we've put together a really solid program. And it's been amazing, not only the strength gains that you've made, but also the mobility, and some injuries that were major factors day one have really just kind of become, by the wayside, just kind of a moot point. I remember problems with the wrist and overhead squatting, and, some of the dynamic power movements that I know you wanted to stay away from, and they got really extremely kettlebell centric. So it's been interesting to see that as you've gotten stronger in the range of motion and the flexibility and all those things have kind of grown at once, and all of a sudden you've been able to add more movements into the repertoire.
Well, absolutely, and the injuries definitely were kind of I would say what was funny was at first I was very skittish about the injuries. I was very kind of aware of them, and now I'm still aware of them, but I think the support structure has really kind of kicked in to where those injured areas are more balanced now, and so there's just a better equilibrium between all those. Obviously, injuries are usually a result of an imbalance of some sort, and so now I have a much greater balance on especially when I'm doing any of the heavier lifts. It just seems like everything's working in sync.
Do you trip people out when you go, because I know you travel a ton for your job, I know you train at a lot of different gyms, does it kind of trip people out a little bit when you walk in and here's this guy who's, mid 40s, 170 pounds, and you're just fucking crushing these weights?
Sometimes it does. Like this last one was kind of cool because I was in a gym. It was vacant. It was just the owner and one of his head coaches that were there, and it was a good time. That was where I did the 405. I mean, I'd done 405 before, but I'd never done it for that many reps, so that was kind of a cool thing. And I talked to the guy a little bit because sometimes some gyms can be a little hinky about coming in doing your own programming, so I have to kind of like just slowly introduce it. Hey, listen, I'm doing a special program with a good friend of mine, John Wellborn, and drop the name a little bit. And a lot of times that kind of eases the tension, so to speak. And then when they see the work and they see kind of what we're doing, they're kind of like. And what's interesting is to have guys, solid athletes. I mean, guys that are like game material, coming up and asking you, hey, what are you doing? Because there's a couple of guys at the gym that I work out here locally. So shout out to the Woodward Gym guys, where they were really interested to see the programming scheme because they saw the results. I mean, they were watching the results over that period of time.
Well, what was cool was really kind of seeing where Jeff was coming from and what he was doing. We needed a way to kind of gauge it, and a lot of stuff we were working up to rep maxes, and then we started kind of just picking percentages and going for max reps, and I kind of took a nod from some of the Windler stuff and really used that so that we could have some inherent periodization. And what was interesting was the way the program was set up is it allowed Jeff to, we always joke with our gambler concept of our training where it's like, you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them. And I know there's been certain days where you've walked in there and been like, dude, I just didn't have it, but you still go in there and you get the work done. It might not be a PR a day, but then there's other days you walk in and you're like, hey, you start warming up and all of a sudden you're going broke and, you're able to squeeze out a couple extra reps. So I know when we kind of backed it off and allowed for you to do a little more volume and started kind of driving some interesting adaptation, and we started really hitting the stuff. I mean, probably the biggest one that I was it's always interesting when you write programming or you start working with athletes and different people, you have this kind of base idea of what you want to do. I mean, almost like an architect designing a house, like here are the walls, here's the plumbing, here's the, the mechanical contracting, here's the electrical. And as you start putting things together and the person starts doing the program, it starts kind of materializing and you see really things come up, and more importantly, you see things come up that you would have never expected. I was really super conscious of Jeff's injuries, and then all of a sudden he's like, hey, I saw some people doing this and I gave it a shot and my wrist wasn't hurting me. And I remember that was a huge deal, was just, my wrist is super damaged. I can't do a lot of these movements. And I remember early in the program, we did a ton of isometric holds. Remember, we were doing the isometric holds on the rings and the handstand isometric holds and the L sets. And I think just really getting strong with the isometric hold created more stability in that joint and the supporting joints around it. And then it was easier to progress. You remember the handstand push-ups were like a big one.
Yeah.
You started with the isometric holds, and then all of a sudden now, I mean, you can bang those things out like nothing.
Well, that's true. I mean, what's interesting was and that's the other thing too, is the progression. I think the progressions were key. In the beginning, we did a lot of work with the sandbags, and then we kind of progressed up to actual barbells and other dumbbell movements. And the same thing with the handstand stuff. I was really doing the handstand holds were challenging for sure for the wrist, but then all of a sudden it was like we kind of like skipped them in a programming cycle or something, and then all of a sudden we come back and like you said, I just kind of was like, wonder how it's going to feel. Let's see what it's like. And I was very conscious of, okay, how's it feeling? And as soon as I got down there and started doing them, I totally was surprised on my own. I mean, I was like, holy shit, just knocked them out. I think it was a rep scheme of 21-15-9, and I did it all unbroken, and I was really surprised. I was like, I mean, don't get me wrong, it wasn't easy, but at the same time, I was so close at the very end that I was just like, okay, there's no way I'm gonna go unbroken with only 2 more reps to go. I'll figure out how to do this.
It was super interesting in that. Jeff really comes from this kind of, long swim, kind of long run kind of mentality a little bit, and, kind of the extreme. And I know you got super into the kettlebells just because some of the limitations with the barbell movements. And I remember coming back and really trying to put together some stuff that really not only was able to highlight some stuff, but also, like he always talks about, it increases lethality on the field. And, the other big one too, and what we really tested was, can a higher level of fitness and making Jeff stronger and better and just rehabbing his injuries, can that pay dividends for his performance in terms of shooting? And I remember we had a bunch of theories that, you take an individual who is highly trained in very, very good shape, and you put him into Jeff's training environment for the pistol and the rifle, and that person is able to increase their proficiency with the pistol and rifle at a greater rate of somebody that's out of shape. So, I mean, there's that idea of GPP, and, a higher level of fitness is going to translate into better performance in terms of, using the pistol and the rifle, in that kind of training mode. The one thing which I always really loved, and the first time Jeff and I actually met through Tony Blauer and went out and had a shooting day before we ever talked about any training. And the cool part is the mechanics that Jeff was teaching for his shooting were identical to the mechanics we teach at the CrossFit football seminar. The way, the foot positioning, the shoulders, the drop and retracted. And I remember at one point, after we had, we were somewhere out in Riverside at this place shooting. We'd been out there about 8 hours. It was about 100 degrees that day. And towards the end of the training, I look over and Jeff was pretty, obviously had elevated and kind of rotated his shoulders and was kind of round. And I asked him about it. And he's like, no, I need to be dropped and retracted. And it was at that point, I think we both saw a light going on where, we started kind of talking about these, a lot of the mechanics and, more importantly, the body position that I've used for the CrossFit football power athlete and also in my own training. And here are these same, positions that Jeff's teaching. And he's like, as you shoot, you drop and retract and you kind of, brace the pistol from the lats and, just kind of a lot of these different positions that we've seen. So it was super cool to really, and this has happened periodically when I've run into other coaches that are at the top of their game. I mean, obviously guys like Jeff, and when I remember the first time I got a chance to coach and work with Carl Paoli, the same stuff that we teach at the seminar was the exact same stuff that Carl was teaching, and same with Jeff. So it's always really cool to find kindred spirits, or more importantly, people that are at such a high level that are doing things that are completely in line with what you do, because when it really goes back, we have this idea of this kind of blueprint of perfect human movement, and just seeing what Jeff does really reinforces what we do. So I think we have some questions from our listeners, Luke.
Well, let me take that. I wanted to kind of touch on something that John said and actually take it a step further, because the increase of the shooting proficiency is, and now having watched over the last year not only my own performance, but having had the luxury of several elite athletes coming through our programs, I will tell you straight up that we had the chance to work with Ben and Luke, and right away you saw how easy it was to get them at that higher level. But the other thing too that I have found is when we have students that struggle and they're like, hey, I just can't get above this one plateau, if you will. And every industry, every movement, everything has a plateau where you're scratching and clawing to just get to the next plateau. You get the big leaps at first, and that's where a lot of these shooters that we come into contact. I mean, we attract like a higher level of skilled shooters at times, but they get to that point, and the one like I struggle to kind of help them get over that, and the one continuous fiber that ran through them all was that their fitness was kind of lacking. And so we just started telling people straight up, listen, if you wanted to improve your shooting, you need to improve your fitness. And it was such a no-brainer for me because, you look at the background, you look at the community that I come from, it's hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And once I moved into the industry, I started dealing with people outside of my community, it was kind of, whoa, different, ooh, this is strange. And now we've kind of come full circle, gone back to our roots, which is promoting the peak performance from both fitness and shooting to create the ultimate, if you will, and it's working. Those guys are able to move past those plateaus. It doesn't happen in our class. They go back, and several months later they're able to break through those plateaus, but they broke through them not because they were putting more rounds downrange, but because they recognized that they didn't have that linkage between all the muscle chains that would help them and support them. And, the other thing too is the physical tasks of shooting is it's not that physically demanding, but what hurts people is the mental fatigue and trying to stay focused, which anytime you're dealing with heavy weights, you cannot drift off and go, start thinking about, whatever. I mean, you have to be so focused on everything that you're doing, and that mental conditioning, if you will, is a big thing that should transfer over to the shooting, but it doesn't for a lot of people because they just haven't been exposed to that type of environment where that mental conditioning has to be so razor sharp.
Well, most people aren't repetitive athletes, and that's kind of just a hallmark of any top-tier athlete is that this idea of like repetition. To this day, it's there's movements, whether it's in the weight room, on the field, playing football, whatever it is, that I've done thousands, hundreds of thousands of times in slow motion, mentally thought about it, and this idea that slow is smooth, smooth is fast, that really comes out of it. And I think you can take somebody that is a repetitive athlete, and I know for me, like if I can watch somebody do it, I can mimic it. We always joke at the CrossFit football seminar that my entire career, the reason I was able to do my job as long is because that I was a kind of an autistic monkey in a lot of ways, and that I can focus on something. If I can watch somebody do it, whether it be on film or in person, I can mimic that. And and then just need repetition and reps. And I think where people really break down, and whether it be the difference between somebody being a great football player, even at our seminars, is that people get fried on being able, or on forcing somebody to do the same thing over and over again, and really the attention to detail. And I know we've talked about it before on the show, but I mean, I love to shoot. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I don't get to do it enough. And when I get to go and do different training classes or get put in different environments, I always felt like I was a little bit behind because I didn't have enough trigger time, and that's when I started doing dry firing. And I, 2 or 3 nights a week for 30 minutes before I go to bed, I usually do all my dry firing stuff in the mirror and really work on, being able to draw that pistol out of the holster and, trigger management and all the little things that we've worked on. And I know that while I still got to suck Luke and the guys to go to the range more often, it pays huge dividends. And, hopefully we're going to be in here in Austin in June. Hopefully Jeff will be in town. We can go down and train with him a little bit. But every time I've got a chance to train with Jeff, it's always been really, really enlightening. And more importantly, there's nothing more that I love than falling short and seeing things of improvement and being like, you got to get this better, man. That's one of my favorite things in the world, is something to work on. So it's been super exciting, but it's just become such an interesting thing, and we see it at the CrossFit football seminar. I mean, people show up, and the better fitness they're in, the better shape they're in, the more they've done the programming, the more they're invested, the more they get out of it. Somebody shows up and they're like, oh, I'm not in very good shape, I can't do any of these things. Their ability, their capacity to learn is almost diminished. So I mean, there's definitely some correlation between being in better shape and being able to suck more out of it.
I couldn't agree with you more, man.
Little known fact about John's dry firing practice: it's in a mirror, naked. And he videotapes it and shows all of us.
Yeah, with a just naked pistol belt on. You watch me do all the mag changes.
Study, Luke?
What's that?
That's the film that you have to study?
Yeah, well, we have a whole YouTube series we're going to be posting, but John doesn't know about that yet.
Yeah, the only awkward thing is my wife is holding the camera.
And she's laughing the whole time.
Yeah, and she's actually got a horrified look on her face. I'll tell you, you're married to the right woman or right woman where she comes in the bathroom and you're basically sitting there dry firing with your pistol and drawing it from a holster at like 10 o'clock on a Tuesday night, and my wife walks in, doesn't even say anything about it, just walks over, starts brushing her teeth, and walks out. Doesn't even say a word, doesn't look at me, doesn't comment on it, just shuts the door and goes to sleep, like almost like I'm a mirror. I'm thinking to myself, anybody else in America's life would be like, what the fuck are you doing? And my wife just kind of like, and then doing like all the high and low ready stuff for the rifle. I came in one day and she's like, oh God. She's like, my wife's very, I'm very lucky, man. So.
We got a little listener question on the books here. It's from our buddy Russ Green. Hey guys, I was wondering if Jeff can compare his on-the-job performance on this program with other guys who train in a more traditional endurance and bodyweight focused style. What impact does that have in real life?
Well, I mean, training. I think For us, we did a lot. Like in my generation, we did a lot of body weight stuff. And we started to get into a lot of guys. I mean, we were encouraged to get in the weight room and do a lot of stuff in the weight room, and it made sense. But now, for me, what I recognize is, and I think John can even talk about this in greater detail, is the external load is so taxing to your body, so taxing to the overall system, that you can achieve certain things with body weight, but you can achieve so much more with that external load and the stress that it puts on, the whole central nervous system. So when I look at it from a point of view with regards to, hey, what's going to improve my shooting the most, it's going to be external loads. We do still do a lot of body weight work, but anytime I'm doing pull-ups, I'm doing them with extra weight. I'm doing them either in body armor, or I'm doing them with that, just with external weight hanging. And part of that is because I'm never naked. Whenever I'm fighting, I'm never naked. I've got weight on, whether it be.
I don't know. I mean,
we saw some of your videos.
Yeah, we saw a couple of videos on YouTube. You might be fighting in a man thong, but you were kind of naked.
Answering the door late at night with my tomahawk doesn't count. But so I always have load. I always have weight. 30 to 50 pounds at times, and so I have to be able to be so nimble and agile with that weight as if I didn't wear it. And that was one of the things that John and I talked about. Was it's not about what I am when I'm walking around like in the office when I don't have anything on. It's what can I do when I have that load that I operate in. That's the key. That's why we always went heavier and heavier and heavier, because my theory was that if I can do it without this external, or if I can do these movements, normally, then I should have an improved performance when I have to do them all kitted up.
And I would definitely say the kit's a lot lighter now than it used to be. I mean, it's just when we were at SHOT Show, just some of the plates and the plate carriers, and
absolutely.
I mean, I know even my gear from 2 years ago, my body armor compared to what it is now with the the standalones, and it's amazing to see how much lighter stuff's got. But you know what? It's we saw the same thing in football, because in the off season we never trained in our gear, but then all of a sudden you go out to that first day of pads and you're running around with helmet and shoulder pads and just this extra stuff, whether it be for ventilation or what, you just kind of get smoked. And I know when I was fortunate to go down and do a bunch of training with the Naval Special Warfare guys, it was really the first time that those guys had been in their full gear for a while, and it was always pretty funny at the end of the day to see how smoked the backs were and how beat up the guys were. And it took them 4 or 5 days to really get ready and get really back into the fight, whereas we do a lot of training with our body armor on and with weighted vests. I mean, I walk a couple mornings a week with 50-pound weighted vest with my dog, and go for like a 3 or 4 mile walk, and it's always amazing to see the pace change from walking with no vest and just adding that 50 pounds on. All of a sudden it's like adds 2, 3, 4 minutes per mile. So unfortunately it's kind of a necessary evil to really get yourself ready for it, but it's it just comes down to something that's pretty basic, and whether or not people want to realize it or not, a stronger individual is harder to kill than a weaker individual.
I love that saying. That's like my favorite saying nowadays.
Yeah, it's classic Mark Ripto. Stronger people are harder to kill, and Rip, your fellow Texan.
More useful in general.
Yeah. What is it? That's stronger people are harder to kill and generally more useful, I think, was Rip's deal.
Pretty much.
So Jeff, are you in touch with people who are still, I guess, in that old school mentality of body weight, endurance approach, kind of the traditional training? Because I mean, that training as well as I think is psychologically taxing. But I mean, I totally agree that it's not the same as being under a heavy barbell. It's just about kind of enduring the suck for longer rather than, let's say, taking 15 seconds to hit a 5 RM on a heavy 5 RM on your back. But are people in your field starting to appreciate what you have come to appreciate, or do you think there's still some hard-nosed people?
I think that are old school. First of all, people, like when you say my field, I'm going to assume you're talking about the industry and not not the NSW community. In the industry, fitness is it's not a very important thing. I mean, there is a small percentage where it is, but the majority don't recognize fitness and what it can, and overall what it does for for everything, not just for shooting.
Well, it's because they're not selling fitness.
Right, exactly. They're
selling guns and more fucking gear. I mean, if it's like, oh, instead of taking your butt to the gym and getting in better shape, let's just like change the trigger up a little bit, you know?
Well, that's the thing too. Is like we got into like this is a great analogy. You guys will totally dig this. So in our industry, there's a new widget coming out like every day. And the way that the way I talk to people is like, listen, when you see these new widgets coming out, think first for a second about how that widget would compare to like a fat loss widget. You know, all of these 30-day fat loss programs that you see on late night TV, on the infomercials, whatever they are, whether it be some device or some diet or some pill or powder, whatever. You know, look at those. And we all know that you're not going to achieve any of your goals in that kind of framework. Well, the same thing applies. You know, if you want weight loss, if weight loss is your goal, it's not going to be accomplished in a 30-day period. It's a long, it's a big project. And so the same thing with us on the shooting. And when I see guys that are going for these widgets that are supposed to improve their shooting, you know, it's no substitute for the hard work of learning the fundamentals and then employing those fundamentals. And we have a saying, you know, the secret to winning is simple. Master the fundamentals and execute them faster than the bad guy. And where that last part is the key, faster than the bad guy. And I feel like with your elevated fitness and the ability to really recruit those muscles and link everything together, I mean, there's just a rock solid chain that just does really impressive things. And I don't see that. That's where I see the break, is that people don't recognize, you know, some of them are going in the opposite direction. I mean, completely opposite. They're going against biomechanics, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody please just pinch me, wake me up from this bad dream. So the frustrating thing is trying to help people to recognize that you have God-given talents, you need to exploit them, and that might mean some hard work in the gym. And as far as the reference with endurance, oh shit, man, I'm not running anywhere anymore. So, I mean, if I'm going to run, I have to put it in perspective. My run is maybe max 400 meters. If I literally had to think about any of the times that I had to run in a combat situation, I would say maybe the furthest I ever did that was like maybe 800 meters, maybe, you know. So I'm training for my mission. I've been doing this job long enough to where I know exactly what my mission is, and we have created that in that programming. But it's not just my mission; it's pretty much what everybody else's mission would be. That's in this.
You know, what always kind of makes me laugh a little bit with Jeff's Triton classes is there's people on the internet that will knock it a little bit for saying it's too many rounds. They shoot too much. That was like, I remember reading some stuff. I remember when I first met Jeff, I got on and, you know, like Googled some of his classes and what it was, and there was people that were actually complaining that the days were too long and it was too many rounds. That was a knock. And I remember it's kind of like, you know, when you come to CrossFit football seminar, we start at 8, we get done at 4 or 5. And we've had people be like, it was too long a day. They didn't give us enough chance to eat. It was too much work, you know. And I'm like, dude, you guys paid the money. Like, I'm giving you everything I have. Like, you know, I'd much rather get that comment and that complaint than be like, we didn't do enough. This was a waste of time. I wish we had done more. And I just always remember when I read that, I was like, man, that's Jeff's our guy. I mean, the fact that people are complaining about shooting rounds downrange, and then I just kind of always chuckle back to, you know, going to Mid-South and, you know, in 5 days shot like 13,000 rounds. And I was like, man, these guys are complaining about shooting 800 to wait till they got to shoot a few thousand in a day.
It's funny. I mean, it's sad in some respects because I think a lot of people mean well, but I don't think they get it. You know, I think that's the problem, is that a lot of people just really don't get it. And once people do get it, I mean, it's like a light switch just went off in them, because then they figured it out. And, you know, it's frustrating because there is a reluctance, I think. It's funny because the industry touts itself as being, you know, He-Man, you know, we're going to get out there, blah, 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 blah. But yet you ask them to work hard in a single training day and put an effort in. Because that's the thing. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about the reps that we're doing. And people get all bent out of shape. You're right, John. Everybody was bitching about the round count. And I'm like, hey, at what point did I tell you to just hose the target? You know, every round that you fire in our class is a willfully placed round on the target. And if it's not, it's a fail. it's a failed rep in a sense. And, you know, when we put that level, and I love that about the CrossFit football seminar, where the emphasis was on, you know, the first thing that you guys talked about was safety as it relates to the athlete. You know, because you can't hurt the athlete. You have to. That goes the opposite direction of what you're trying to accomplish. And I really appreciated that, because that put the emphasis on form and on correct technique and on being mindful of what you're doing, not just going through the motions, but being present as you're doing it. And that was so directly related to exactly how we train and what we train. You know, that I was all over that like a hobo on ham sandwich.
Well, I mean, it's always an interesting thing when people start talking about repetition and movement, and you know, somebody got it wrong when they said, you know, practice makes perfect. It's actually perfect practice makes perfect. That if there's, you know, you're just going to be, you know, and the one thing when I really started working with the Naval Special Warfare guys, I just realized that, you know, nobody ever rises to the occasion. I remember one of the chiefs made a good comment to me once. He said, you know, nobody is ever somebody on the battlefield that they weren't in the training. And I was like, well, what do you mean on that? They're like, if a guy's going to fucking quit, or a guy doesn't want to put in hard work, that guy that's not willing to do what he needs to do to be the best, the minute that all of a sudden live bullets go fly and we're on the battlefield, that guy's not all of a sudden going to flip a switch and turn into fucking Rambo and blow you away. He's like, the guy that's, you know, in training, puts in the hours, can run and do everything, that guy all of a sudden, once we get out there, you know, that's the guy you expect. Nobody ever surprises me. And he's like, you know, the Naval Special Warfare motto has been, you know, nobody ever rises to the occasion. You just follow the level of your training. And our deal for increasing margin of error, or a decreasing margin of error, and making sure that everything you do has, you know, perfection in it, that you understand exactly what we need to do, you understand the fundamentals, and you have rehearsed and practiced those fundamentals to the point where they're second nature. So that all of a sudden, once live bullets start happening and you get into a stressful situation, you know, you don't have to fall that far. And I mean, when he told me that, it resonated with me, because I saw the exact same thing playing football. If a guy wasn't able to do it in practice, and a guy wasn't able, you know, wasn't willing to put in the hours, work hard, couldn't do it when it was walkthrough, all of a sudden we get out on the field and there's 100,000 people, and the fans are cheering, and you got some all-pro, you know, all-world dude making $100 million a year. He's standing in front of you. You're not all of a sudden going to rise to the occasion. That guy's all of a sudden not going to have some out-of-body experience and become somebody that he wasn't, that you didn't know. So, I mean, nobody ever surprised me, and it's always cool when you meet people from completely different walks of life and do different jobs that say the exact same thing, and you realize that a performance-based job, a performance-based style of training, there's these really kind of common threads. And really, when I got a chance to meet Jeff and really see what he was doing, there was so much carryover, and there was so much synergy between what we were doing and what he was doing, that it was just kind of it was awesome, and it was really great to meet another friend and really see somebody that was at the top of their game, that was doing it the way it needs to be done and saying all the right things. And I mean, I've been fortunate in that most of the shooting stuff that I've done has either been, you know, with the mill guys we've worked with, or with Jeff. So I've never had a chance to really see what's out there. But based on just some of the stuff, it just doesn't seem that, you know, fitness is really, you know, somebody rather, you know, instead of spending that, you know, $150 to go join a gym, they'd rather spend, you know, $1,000 on you know, $500 Glock or something. So
true. So true.
$1,000 would be better spent going to your local CrossFit and fucking signing up for some essentials, you know.
Well, that's what I tell people too, you know. And there's a reluctance. It's because we see it too. There's a reluctance, and that's the direction that we point people as, kind of like a default entry, kind of like a gateway, if you will. Is find a local CrossFit gym that has a good reputation, good coaching. Get involved in the essentials, learn the basic movements, and, you know, establish a good solid base. And then from there, I think the ability to really delve. I mean, you know, we kicked around, we toyed. I think we were half joking about taking the programming that we did and you know, tweaking it a little bit, and then making it a public format for folks to sort of follow.
I wasn't kidding about that. I think it's fucking home run. I mean, you know, we've been working on those cards, and I think you know, an ebook. You know, I know we're trying to finish up some of the training stuff, but even a lot of the nutrition protocols and a lot of the things we've been doing, I think there really hasn't been a kind of starter manual for people that are like potential Triton concept customers and trainees that are coming that are like, Jeff, I need to get better at this. And and you see it at your local CrossFit gym. I mean, I've owned a CrossFit gym since '09. And for years, we've had people walk in the door and they start training, and about a month into their training, after they're getting their dicks kicked in the dirt every day, they're always like, man, is there anything I can do to make this stuff a little easier? They're like, yeah, well, let's talk about, are you sleeping, are you recovering, are you eating? Like, what are you doing outside of this place that's helping you maximize your gains here? And I think for the same deal with Jeff, where, he has people come and he comes to his initial deal, and, Jeff's first thing when you go to his seminar is he has a test. You shoot the qual, you shoot the test, and then you train the entire day through different drills to, expose your weaknesses, find out what your limiting factors are and how to fix them, and then gives you enough rounds to be able to build on that. And then at the end of the day, you shoot the test again. Did you get better? And if you didn't get better and you didn't pass, there's no like pat on the back, don't worry, you're fine. No, you fucking failed. And that's awesome. And I think like the question, I'm sure Jeff's got this for every class he's had. He's had somebody fail. They've been like, well, how do I pass this stuff? How do I get better? What do I need to do? Do I need to take personals? Do I need to do this? And it would be nice to be able to hand them the ebook or whatever it is and be like, hey, you need to get your butt in line. You need to get yourself, you need to get fit. You need to increase your flexibility and your strength. And more importantly, start training to create this, kinesthetic awareness that allows you to use this extension called the pistol, the rifle for your good mechanics. And here's a roadmap. This is the program that I did that, really helped me. And this is how we kind of, gateway you in. And, some people might not, be up to go join a gym or feel comfortable doing it. They might want to do it in their garage. I mean, we have people all the time that come to us in seminars that train in their garage, that follow CrossFit Football, Power Athlete from their garage. And this is their, this is where they do. They don't want to go to a commercial gym. And you know what? There's got to be a resource for those people. And then there's also people that go to a CrossFit gym that are in a, programmed environment that would still love to see this stuff and be like, hey, this is what I'm doing, but hey, this is what Jeff does, and this is the track that I'm on. So, I mean, we got some stuff to finish up, but I definitely, Jeff, I wasn't kidding. I think that's a great idea.
Well, I do too, and I'm all over that. I think that's probably one of the greatest contributions that we can have for the community at large. Is it's right in line with both what you and I have always thought, which is fitness is going to. It may not be the supreme answer, but it is such a great answer for so many people that if we reach a certain point where everybody all of a sudden is now fit and we really have to think outside the box, well, that's great. That'd be an awesome problem to have. So I agree with you, and I'm excited to see it because I do think I get, people have been wondering, and I've gotten a lot of email exchanges or text messages or even face-to-face meetings where people are asking me, what am I doing? What does it look like? Is it like this? Is it like that? And it's difficult to try to explain to them what it is. So I think it would be great to be able to just, like you said, just basically hand them, and metaphorically the ebook so that they can take it and run with it. And it'd be great to see it acknowledged and as far as like gyms being okay letting folks kind of come in there and play with this programming either on their own time or however. So I think it would be great. I'm excited about it. I think folks are going to really dig it.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a pretty good. I think CrossFit Football is a pretty good name, and people know who I am. And I, like you said, man, you show up to a gym and you're like, hey, this is the program I'm doing, and this is who I've been working with. And I don't think you've really run into anybody that looked at it that thought, no, I'm not going to let you do this in my gym. And
right.
We've had people that have followed the CrossFit Football program for many years that have called us and been like, hey, I called this local gym and asked if I could do the CrossFit Football program, and the guy said absolutely not. And instead of being like, well, okay, I won't do the program, they literally just hit up Rogue or got on Craigslist and bought weights and put it in their garage to do the program. Yeah. And I always think like that's probably the biggest compliment that I can get from people where they're like, you know what, your program was important to me. I wanted to do it, so I made it work.
Absolutely.
We get hit up, all the time for people that are in, if you look on the football site today, there was a guy, Bird, who sent us a picture of him squatting, and he's in the middle of Afghanistan, and there's, he's got some weights, and, we get a ton of traffic from guys that are in harm's way that are really doing this program, and it's allowed them to be better soldiers. And I really think that practical application has been the best part of this program. So, I think it's a no-brainer, and more importantly, it's something that's so needed. I mean, if you do a little Google searching for like tactical training, I mean, you get military athlete, you get some stuff, but a lot of that is really geared towards kind of the soldier. And what we're talking about is like, how do you get that guy who's 45 years old, who's out of shape, he's got a couple kids, that wants to get more proficient with the shooting and actually feel like he's doing something. And I think there's no greater measure for your fitness than being able to go out and do something physical like use the pistol or rifle.
Absolutely. And, I think, too, one of the things that you had mentioned was, for the younger class of athletes or shooters, trying to get them into the gym is probably not a far, it's not like not a difficult pitch to hit, so to speak. But the middle-aged athletes or middle-aged shooters that are maybe, like you said, a little bit more out of shape, and there might be some reluctance or resistance to try to get in and start working. I think the biggest obstacle for a lot of people is just owning up to the fact that, okay, I'm not where I want to be, and being okay with that, and then finding a program that allows them to make inroads and make to kind of see themselves moving forward. And that's where I think this program can be the most beneficial is, in fact, when I was over at that gym doing those heavy deadlifts, the owner wanted to take some pictures and videos because they're doing a kind of like a Patriot kind of event where they are trying to bring in veterans that are, older veterans, retirees, if you will, and get them involved. And, he was very complimentary in the sense that, hey, you're kind of middle-aged and you're doing, this is what you're capable of doing. So that's a great incentive and motivation for some of these other guys that are in that same age bracket to try to get up and get out there and do that sort of thing. And I mean, that was obviously a great testament to the programming, to your work, being able to get in there and do that. And if it helps other people get involved and take their fitness a little bit more seriously, not just because it's going to improve their shooting, but because in general they just want to be fitter, then I think it's a home run.
Cool. Luke, we got another question.
Yeah, we got a couple in here. We'll start with Peter's question. He says, and I'm not sure who it's geared for. I guess both of you guys can pop off. How would you break up strength training and endurance training if you only have an hour a day to train? Would you do both at the same time or cycle strength training, then move on to endurance training? I mean, it's relatively vague. There's a lot of questions. Let's just assume this person's generally unfit.
Well, the idea becomes, I think what he's getting into is like actually this idea of periodization that, hey, should I do a strength phase and then an endurance phase? And I think if anything, which we've been fighting for years about is that you don't develop things mutually exclusive, that everything kind of works within synergy. And the strength training works better the better shape you're in. If you notice for power athlete and CrossFit football and the training that we do is kind of we definitely tap into those first two energy systems and but we do tap into that third and we kind of train energy systems, not mutually exclusively, but as a complete unit, just like we don't, hey, today we're going to train arms. I mean, Jeff, in any training day have I ever said, hey, you know what, today you're going to go in and train arms and calves? No. Right. We don't train like that. We don't train body parts because your body works as this kind of cohesive. I mean, every day we go in, we do, we obviously vary different planes of motion, different primal movements, pushes and pulls, but we're always training the body as a full, complete, mechanism. And I would actually not recommend that you do just a strength period, just endurance and periodize your program. I mean, I'm more a fan of some block periodization where we start rotating different movements and pulling in and changing time domains and kind of doing a more mixed modal, mixed time domain style of training. So if I was going to recommend how you should do it, I think you should lift heavy weights and get your ass in shape.
Well, I'll throw in my 2 cents worth too, because we did come across this during the programming, and I was like, okay, endurance I don't have to do that long ass run anymore, or the long ass ruck marches or swims or anything like that. So endurance wasn't quite as important to me at this point. And so when we created the pyramid of strength with Metcons, I loved how it kind of, it worked up to Metcons, then it worked back down to strength, which was the perfect thing as far as exposure was concerned, because when we were doing Metcons, they were still heavy. It wasn't like we were just running for a run. It was all based off of moving weight and heavy weight. And then when we finished that block and we went into kind of like a more Metcon kind of format, I found that because we had put a heavy emphasis on strength, I wasn't going to break any land speed barriers, kind of things, but at the same time, I felt very comfortable with where my endurance was just from all the strength work that we had been doing. Now, if you need to go out and compete in like ultra athlete, ultra endurance athlete.
But Jeff, you also come from a background that's super endurance based. That's what was interesting and such a cool property for me when we started rapping about this. Is I'm like, dude, here's this guy that's obviously a big monkey, that's obviously comes from this endurance background, because pre 9/11, the mentality for naval special warfare was like long swim, long run, big bench. And and then it kind of came this kind of tactical athlete, and then I think in the mid I think like later 2000s, that's when we really started getting hit up, and these guys that were from DAMNEC and different naval special warfare were like, hey, their job was more akin to what I did in the NFL than it was to this kind of long swim, long bike mentality. And those guys were, when I looked at their training, looked at their mission, looked at the loads they were carrying and what they had to do, we started training those guys more like, an outside linebacker, rush end, that type of kind of mentality. And I think that style of training really paid dividends. It allowed guys to be bigger, stronger, more explosive. And then, they obviously had that background behind them. You come out of BUD/S and you can't run long distance, I'd be surprised.
That's true.
You got to run 3 miles every day just for chow. So you're running 9 miles a day just to eat. I'm pretty sure you're okay with some distance. So, and I know we did a ton of strength stuff, and a big part of the reason why we were so strength heavy in the beginning was we had a lot of imbalances. We, Jeff really struggled with some of his, primal movements, and the best way to do it was kind of strengthen the machine and kind of get everything done. The cool part was when all of a sudden he hit me up and was like, I'd like to do a little bit more Metcon stuff. I want to try and change up the conditioning. It was more of a test to see if what we had done paid dividends, and I think he went out, kicked in the doors. And then after you got done with that, you were like, yeah, I'd like to get back to doing some of the strength stuff. And it was interesting how easy it was to switch back into it, and then all of a sudden the numbers kind of blew up. So I wrote an article on Talk to Me Johnny a couple of years ago called "Do I Need to Be in Shape?" And a guy asked me a question: Hey, do I need to be in shape to do this stuff? Is there a benefit for me in being better conditioned? I went through and kind of wrote an S&C based article based on this idea that you got to be in shape. This idea that, the better shape you are, the faster you can recover, the more training you can do, the more workouts. If you're in such poor physical shape that you can only lift weights once every 7 to 10 days, how much work are we really going to get done? If you're so physically sore from just one day of training that you can't come in the next day and do anything of value, we're only going to progress at a certain rate. And we've seen that athletes that are in better physical shape get stronger at a faster interval and are able to, just basically do more and be better at it. So, really balancing Jeff's programming with what he wants and what I want was a really cool exercise. And then, forcing him to kind of program. And it's always fun to have people program for themselves because they actually program the things they love to do. The best is like, hey, just send me what you want to do, and then I go back and fucking change it because I can see what they like. And it's, and I never told you that, but I was like, hey, I want you to write some stuff, and he would send it to me, and then I would change it because it was super easy to be like, okay, this is what he wants to do, this is what he likes, this is his wheelhouse, and I'm gonna fucking change it. And that's part of this exercise is allowing him to find strengths, and then realizing like I need him to work on his weaknesses, but never at the expense of losing who he is. And that's really what I've seen with the programming stuff is allow people to be who they are and maximize their strengths, but by pulling up their weaknesses as well. So, Luke, we got any more questions?
Yeah, we have one more.
Okay.
I got a question too, if I can jump in just for Jeff. I know Luke and I took a trip down to Coronado and we talked with one of the strength and conditioning coaches down there, and he said his biggest problem that he had in his job was kind of dealing with the personalities. So I know fundamentals, limiting factors, dead bugs, these things aren't sexy, but based off your past experience and now you're like learning the value in these things, how would you approach kind of those young go-hards about putting dead bugs, putting mobility and stability into their training now? Even though they may not see the value, how would you approach those guys?
That's a good one, man. That's tough because we see that you're at that age group. When you're at the 20 to 30 age group, it's invincibility of sorts, and taking the extra time to try to program in that stability, mobility. I'm a believer in it now. And I used to I was horrible with mobility. It was good for maybe somebody like me, but it wasn't good for somebody that wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I think the best way to get across to them is to incentivize it to the point where, hey, okay, so you're able to do such and such for max. That's awesome, but you're limiting your success because you don't have the full range of motion, or you don't have the mobility and the stabilization to push that heavy stuff. Because that's going to tap into that alpha male. Oh, you mean I can be stronger? I can lift more? I can move more? I can do that? So that's probably the best way to approach it. Is you're not going to reach all of them, but you don't have to. You only have to reach a handful who buy into it. And when they buy into it, and then guys around them see their gains and see their performance kind of, move up a notch or two, there's going to be this natural competitiveness that's going to say, oh, fuck that. I'm not letting this guy get faster or stronger than me, And then you start to see how it all comes, that's how it works, is that, you're not going to be able to change a culture culturally. You've got to change the culture individually, and that is the best way to go about it.
Nice. Thanks.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Oh, so yeah, you got to get their salty old chiefs on board. The idea that there's some salty old barnacle that's in charge of all these young guys, you got to get that guy on, because for those young guys, he kind of live and die by what that old guy says. So I know for a lot of work that we've done with Naval Special Warfare was going in and working with the chiefs and working with those guys and really getting them on with the program. And then when talking with them, being like, well, hey, if I need it, the young guys need it, and they don't need to wait till they're 40 years old to figure out they need this stuff. I mean, I was recently out in Hawaii and working with a lot of their older guys. It was interesting to kind of see it full circle where, hey, I was this young go hard and this is what I did, and then obviously the job fucked me up, and now I'm trying to fix injuries, surgeries, battle back for the rehab, and putting that stuff together. And then it always comes to the question where, like, if I had done this stuff, would I have these problems? And I'd be like, well, the job that you did is difficult, but I'd like to say that it would be not as severe as what you're dealing with now. And their comment is like, well, we need to get the young guys doing it. And I'm like, well, that's up to you. They're going to do exactly what you tell them to do. If you make it a priority, those guys will make it a priority, because the last thing they want to do is have their Master Chief mad at them, or or their platoon leader or whatever. So those guys kind of live or die by those older guys. So I think getting those guys really in was the big buy-in.
I'll also say this, and you kind of hit on it. It's like I was very lucky, very fortunate. I was very athletic, younger, and I kind of rode on my own coattails to some extent. I didn't have to work nearly as hard as some of these other guys because I was already naturally fast, or I was already agile enough to where I can move my body weight very well. But I will say this: I wish that I had a program like this or something similar back then, because to see my gains now at my age would have been sick to see them when I was younger.
Yeah.
So we got one more question from Kyle, and he's asking. He does CrossFit football with his squad a few days a week, usually a Tuesday-Thursday split or a Monday-Wednesday-Friday split, depending on the week. Is it still useful to follow the program split up on the weeks, especially our Tuesday-Thursday week in the gym? And what would be an optimal suggestion what's optimal programming if we can't follow strict? And just a little more about him. He's a reformed powerlifter and follows daily, just looking to get the most bang for the buck with his squat.
So he follows the program 3 days a week. How would he break it up?
So if he can't, I think his question is, it's a binary approach. If I don't do 4 days a week, is it no gains?
No.
Right. And he's kind of answered his own question here in the sense that if you have 2 days to train, then you train for 2 days and you follow the program and try to get a push-pull, right?
Yeah. Well, there's another. What we laugh about is I have over like 185 or 200 Talk to Me Johnnies that address almost every single one of these questions, but the mere fact that the search function is kind of difficult for people to kind of use. There's actually one I wrote for Luke. It was called Jaeger Bombs in Pound Town, where I wrote this 2-day-a-week program in there that I follow when I'm on the road or run into stuff. Like I was didn't get to train Friday because I was on a plane all day to New York. We taught all day Saturday, Sunday, and I left at 10:30 on Sunday night from New York and got home at like 3-something to LAX and got home. And obviously, when you go to bed at 3 and your kids wake you up at 5:45, you are a zombie the entire day. And then between what we've been doing the last couple of days, so what I'll do today is I'll go in and I'm going to squat. I'm going to do some form of pressing. I'm going to do some vertical pulls. And probably on Friday, I'm going to probably go in and maybe pull some deadlifts, and I'm going to do a bunch of mobility work. I'm probably going to do some rows and really break it up. So I would love to be in a perfect environment where I had 7 days a week of training, and I could, every meal was, packaged in a Tupperware container, and I got to drink exactly a gallon of water and take my, get my pre-workout meal 30 minutes before I train, and 90 minutes within my post-workout window, I get to consume exactly 6 ounces of animal-based protein, 125 grams of sweet potatoes, and something. But unfortunately, with the kids' life, building a gym, all the things that we do, things just kind of go outside. So the moral of the story is the program is written as really a 4-day-a-week program across the football. I write that 5th day on Saturdays to almost save people from themselves, because I know if I don't write something that they are going to just go out and fucking go off the reservation. So it's really a 5-day-a-week program, but we have 4 days of strength training. In that 4 days, we have 2 squats, usually one's an intensity, one's a volume, and we have 1 heavy pull, which would obviously be either a rack pull in some form of dynamics, or a heavier, slower pull, and then we have some form of dynamic pulling. So the program's broken up into push and pulls. If I was to write a 3-day-a-week program, I would probably squat 1 day, press. I'd probably do a heavy deadlift, and then some form of dynamic pulling, and then that 3rd day I'd come back and squat and bench. I do some vertical pulls, some horizontal pulls, a ton of trunk work, a bunch of low back. And, based on, what your goals are, I'd probably definitely train some biceps and some triceps, whether you want to do some hammer curls or, whatever you want to do, some close grips or whatever you want. And just write a, program. And we've written 3-day-a-week programs. We've also had people that have done 2-day-a-week programs. And have they been able to make the gains? No. They have not been able to make the gains at the same rate, just for the mere fact that they don't have as many training hours. That's like saying.
I want to just hammer a point home there.
Okay.
Could the smartest person in the world write a 2-day-a-week program that is as effective as a 4-day-a-week program?
No.
Right. So you're getting 2 days a week in. Not. There's no magic program.
Yeah. It's kind of like that's like saying, hey Jeff, is somebody who shoots once a year going to be as good as somebody that shoots every single day? And you're like, well,
probably not.
Probably not.
But I will say this. This is the problem that I ran into because of all the travel that I do, and this was something that I had to overcome early on in our programming, which was I wasn't going to have perfect conditions. I wasn't going to have that 4-week kind of scenario. So I had to try to change my filter to a certain extent, and I instead of being so micro, I macroed out, and I looked at the big program, which is what we were talking about. It wasn't, it's broken down in a 9-week block, but rather than look at it weeks, we just looked at it as blocks. And rather than look at it as days, we looked at it as as events. Because when I can take that, just changing it up like that. So if we had in the 9-week program, we were going to do 4 workouts. That's 4 times 9 is 36. You all of a sudden, you're just looking. I got to do 36 workouts as fast as I can over the next 10 months or less. And when you look at it that way, okay, so you missed 4 days. It's not the end of the world. You can get that. You can regain that momentum. And I think that was the key for me, was looking at it from that perspective. That okay, it's like you were saying. Every day you just want to move some dirt. And if it's not every day, then as often as you can, move the dirt.
Well, we have one of our clients is a guy out of Denver, a guy named Bill Bradley, and Bill has not missed a training day. I mean, literally, he's trained every single day since 2008. So every day has been at minimum at least to constitute a workout, at minimum like a mile walk. So even on his deathbed when he's been sick, he's gone out and walked at least 1 mile. And has not missed a training day 7 days a week, 365 days a year since 2008. And, part of some of his, some of his, this is obviously a commitment he made, but some of his gains have been negated from overtraining. So now I got him, we've been playing with some different recovery methods and more importantly, some monitoring stuff. And trying to, give him a matrix to, for, when to go, when to not. And we looked at some of the variable heart rate, from Joel Jameson, just to try to give him some way to kind of gauge it. And when you have a guy like that, he's going to train every day. You almost have to put something in to allow him to train every day. For Jeff, we looked at it and said, you know what? You have 4 workouts a week. You have 7 days. And Jeff's like, hey, I know I'm traveling this weekend, so I'm going to have to train Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Or I might travel and I might get home on Tuesday, so I'm going to have to go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And, I know there's days that you've even had to do a double just to try to catch up. And, for me, I always have that recovery day where I try to walk and, we've, always kind of get something done. I remember Kelly Starrett told me that, his minimum workout was kettlebell swings and rows. He would do 4 rounds of 500-meter row, 15 kettlebell swings, and that was his on the road, I can't get anything done, I don't have any time, I can take 7 minutes and at least get this workout done. And it relieves a lot of stress. It's kind of I do the same thing with eating, where instead of looking at each day of eating as one day, we look at it over the course of a week, hey, I know I need to consume this many calories, this many protein, and this is what my macros look over an entire week. So if I'm low one day, I can come back and eat a little bit more the next day, or if I overeat one day, I can come back and eat a little less. And instead of oh my God, this day's over, I totally fucked it up, and the stress that becomes. So it's So
if you were to make let's say put into place a prescription, so to speak, with CrossFitFootball.com workouts for Kyle, would you have him follow a week behind? And if he knows he's going to get 2 days, maybe just follow the Monday, Tuesday approach, or just get your squat, push, pull in, and then if you're going to have the next week's going to be a 3-day split, a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday approach?
Yeah, I mean, it's always easier to kind of follow a week behind and then be able to look at the program and kind of fit where you need. I think as long as you're getting 2 squats and 1 pull in, and then I think you're pretty good. I mean, I know we really cut out the bench pressing and the floor pressing from Jeff just from his wrist, and he does a ton of overhead pressing and a lot of push-ups and deficit push-ups, and we do a lot of stuff. And I know he's made some great gains, but that was merely something as we're working around injury. So I think I would just as long as I could get my squats in, as long as I can get my pulls and my pushes, I would really look at it from basic primal movements. And then just do a ton of our warm-up and cool, or warm-up and isostability work. So, yeah, it's tough. I mean, I really wish I could go back in 18 years old, and with, the only stress in my life is if going out and drinking 2 nights is going to adversely affect my training, opposed from drinking 1 night. On our form, this kid is 18 years old, and he asked me a question about if I thought that drinking alcohol was going to adversely affect his performance. I'm like, well, how much are we talking about here? You talking about every day? He's like, no, I go out and have drinks 1 night a week. Is that going to hurt me? And I was like, you're 18, so my official stance is you shouldn't be drinking alcohol.
for everyone else who has a situation.
Yeah. But if somebody over the age of 21 had this question, I would tell you that all things in moderation. And at the end of the day, like, if there's alcohol being drank, there's probably going to be girls around that are drinking it that are going to be open to a little more suggestion, and you should probably go out and have a couple drinks, be social, and don't be the weird guy who's in bed at 8 o'clock on a Saturday night because you got to train tomorrow. I mean, go out, have a few drinks, laugh, have a good time, meet some girls, and you're 18 years old. Like, like when I was 18 years old, like I'm pretty sure I didn't sleep till I was like 26, and now like my daughters haven't really, well, the other night we got a full night's sleep, but for the last 2 weeks they've been waking us up in the middle of the night, so I forgot how bad it was. So
That's funny.
That's all we got on our end.
Right on.
So.
Jeff, is there anything you want to puff or push out to the world or to the Power Athlete Nation?
You know, I tell you what, I just a couple thoughts. One, you mentioned the conditioning training cards, and I will say that for those that don't know what that is, we started a training program on the shooting side that uses just a regular playing deck of cards that has each it's broken down into suits. So obviously you have 4 suits. We break it down into speed, marksmanship, baselines, and dry fire. And the pistol rifle has been doing really good. So then we started kind of formulating a strategy for the conditioning side. So now we're merging those two, what have always been individual skills, shooting, fitness, together, and really excited about how those cards are going to come out. The rifles just came out, so we got to give the rifles some growth time, and then as soon as that's done, then the conditioning cards will come out. And I think folks within the Power Athlete Nation will definitely get a kick out of those.
Cool. And then you have some classes coming up. Anything? If people want to get a hold of you, TritonConcepts.com. If they want to
absolutely
sign up for one of their classes, it's we highly recommend it. We've done it, and we're definitely a fan and a believer in what you teach.
Absolutely. TritonConcepts.com is a good way to get in touch with us. They can go up on Facebook, find a bunch of stuff on Facebook as well. Either me personally or the company itself. But yeah, we're looking pretty good this year. Actually, we got a lot of programs, so we're not at the halfway mark yet, and I'm really happy with what we've done so far this year.
Awesome. Well, cool. Thanks for coming on, and I'm sure we'll be. I'll be talking to you.
Absolutely, I'll look forward to it, and definitely looking forward to when you're here in June.
Yep, we'll see you then.
Steve, all right, Tex, you guys got anything?
No, nothing. Jeff, that was awesome, man. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks a lot.
You bet, man. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, see you soon.
See ya.
All right, guys. Talk to you.